Hey, if you're new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me, and honestly, it'd make my day. If you already did, thank you so much. Oh, and by the way, if you like listening to fan fiction, check out my other channel. The link's in the description. Once again by TheVictor. A 7-year-old Luffy is approached by his future self. It seems Luffy's entire crew died at the hands of Fleet Admiral Akainu right after defeating the Yonko Kaido. Follow a much stronger, smarter Luffy as he repeats his adventure, hoping to avoid the same fate, as well as correct some mistakes. Adios.
37. To the sky. See you later, guys. Luffy yelled and waved as the Going Merry headed towards the giant whirlpool. The cowardly trio screamed and cringed and held on the ship's railing at all times, while the 4 more monstrous members dealt with the situation in different ways. Luffy jumped around in joy, Robin looked tense, but otherwise calm, Zoro held on to the railing with a smirk on his face, while Sanji continually offered both ladies his arms. Nami more often, since she seemed scared, while Robin didn't. The bird on the railing looked panicked, as he tried to fly away, but he was bound to the railing. Then everything suddenly stopped. Why did the fun stop? Luffy pouted in disappointment. What fun? Nearly everyone, except Robin and Zoro, yelled at him. Those two just laughed. But sailing in the whirlpool was so much fun, Luffy pouted again. Better than the first time. First time? Zoro asked while several crew members either face-palmed, sighed or laughed. Yep. She. When I set sail from my home village, I accidentally sailed into a whirlpool. Luffy explained. Zoro's eyes bulged out. You nearly died before even getting your first shipmate? He yelled at the captain. Luffy nodded and laughed sheepishly. You idiot, Nami yelled. He just continued to laugh. Well, if I had died, that would be that. Luffy told her. That'd mean that was how far I was meant to go. Zoro's eyes widened after hearing this. Flashback. Let's test this sword's curse against my luck. If I lose, then that just means I was never a man who'd amount to anything special. He smirked. So, wouldn't you be ashamed if you died because of a whirlpool? Nami asked. Luffy chuckled. I'd be dead, so how could I be ashamed? He asked and looked at her. So, now what happens? He asked after a few moments of silence, but his question was answered by someone not on his crew. Hey, Mugiwara, someone yelled. I've come for your head. Zihahahaha. Luffy's fist blackened immediately. Blackbeard's laugh faltered for a moment. So, I wasn't wrong, he thought. He's definitely incredibly strong. But you didn't seem interested yesterday, Luffy yelled back, trying to make his voice sound as neutral as possible. Zihahahaha. That was before I knew you refused a Shichibukai position and got this nice bounty on your head. But I guess you didn't know. So look, Blackbeard yelled and showed 2 wanted posters. Pirate Hunter Zoro, 60.000.000 Berry, and Monkey D. Luffy, 160.000.000 Berry. Zihahahaha. Blackbeard told him. Most of the Straw Hat's jaws dropped at this. Luffy just smirked. So I guess Smoker either didn't tell them about my hockey or they didn't believe him. He thought. That's good. I almost thought I ruined my plan with that. But then his eyes rested on Blackbeard. Luffy smirked again. He wants my head. Luffy thought and grinned. So I guess that means I can kill him now. He pulled out his sword and slashed forward from the railing. Suyoi Kainami, strong red wave. Luffy yelled and a huge blood-red wave traveled towards Blackbeard's pathetic little raft. You don't have a swordsman yet. Luffy thought with an evil grin. So what are you going to do, Fatbeard? Robin glanced at him. He wasn't kidding. She thought with widened eyes. That slash is intended to kill. Several other members looked at Luffy with surprise. This has never happened before. Zoro thought. Krieg was kinda similar, but this is on another level. He just wanted to shut up Krieg, but this guy. At the last possible moment, Jesus Burgess kicked Blackbeard to the other side of the raft, and as soon as he retracted his leg, the wave rushed past the middle of the raft and cut it cleanly in half, brushing his foot and destroying most of his shoe with it. Water that had been parted started to fill in. The 2 parts of the raft flew in different direction and they too started cracking from the aftershock of the attack. Soon, both parts cracked nearly entirely and soon, They were in like 10 pieces each. Blackbeard held onto one with his dear life and watched in horror at Luffy. His foe smirked and raised his sword again. No, I can't die here, Blackbeard thought. He looked nearly scared to death, haha, he knew that unless something happened, he was a goner. Hey, stop it, he yelled pleadingly, don't do it. Luffy's eyes darkened and he gritted his teeth in anger. Blackbeard knew that he just may have made matters worse. The only thing I hate more than Nakama murdering bastards, Blackbeard, are cowardly Nakama murdering bastards, he spat out and slashed forward. However, as soon as he did, a bullet hit him straight in the head. He bounced off the bullet, but it was enough to change the direction of the slash. The wave went past Blackbeard, destroying another piece of his raft near him, but leaving him unharmed. Luffy turned to the left and glared at Oj, Blackbeard's sniper, who stood on a piece of the raft, with his gun aiming at him. At least his Nakama are loyal, Luffy thought, for now. The sniper shot him several times, preventing him from doing anything for a few moments. Then his bullets ran out. Luffy smirked at him and turned back to Blackbeard, however just as he was about to slash a third time, water exploded beneath them. They were blown into the sky. The 4 Blackbeard pirates made their way to their captain and together they sat on the biggest piece of wood. Zihahahaha, I'm still alive, Blackbeard yelled. I'm pretty lucky, aren't I? The resident champion, Jesus Burgess scowled. Captain, how can you take this so lightly? He yelled at his captain. You're this close to dying and it's all your fault. Zihahaha. But I'm alive, Blackbeard shouted again. I guess it wasn't my time to go yet, eh Oj? Exactly. The sniper replied quietly. Oh, and thanks, Oj, Blackbeard told him. The sniper nodded. Honestly, Captain, Burgess scolded. If you knew he could do that, why did we attack him on the sea? But I didn't know, Blackbeard replied. Anyway, forget about it now. We're all fine. Zihahahaha. Whatever. Meanwhile, on the Going Merry, which was sailing towards the sky, Luffy sheathed his sword and clenched both of his fists. He stood on the door of the Going Merry. Damn, Luffy thought. I failed. That was my last chance to get rid of him before he got ace. Why didn't I just ignore Whitebeard's request and kill him right there in the town? He gritted his teeth. When he finally raised his head, he saw both Zoro and Robin staring at him. He hardly even noticed the position the ship is in. Robin thought, this isn't just some policy of his, this seems personal. He took a deep breath and forced a smile on his lips. He looked around and noticed the rest of his Nakama, much less calm than the 3. Unfurl the sails, Nami ordered. This isn't just a column of water. It's the ocean, a vertically flowing current. Yosh, Luffy yelled and grinned genuinely now, Blackbeard forgotten for a bit upon seeing the determined navigator. He proceeded to do as she asked. She proceeded to explain some things about the phenomenon, but Luffy just focused on what he was doing. Who's this ship's navigator? He heard her say. He grinned. It's Nami Swan. Sanji sang out with a heart in his eye, but didn't do his noodle dance. That might be a little dangerous to do in such a situation. Nami continued yelling orders as Luffy jumped down from the mast and pushed his hand in the air. To the sky, 38. Weird night. Luffy coughed up a lot of water. He looked around and noticed a lot of clouds around the ship. So cool, he yelled out, startling his slowly waking Nakama. What is it, Luffy? Nami asked. Luffy offered her his hand and she accepted. He pulled her up and then pointed at the distance. The sea of the sky, Nami. He told her, I told you it exists. Her eyes widened as she looked around, white surrounding her from all sides. She took a step back. Wow, she whispered. He grinned and looked around. He saw more disbelieving faces. He chuckled. Welcome to the sky, guys, he announced. Everyone started laughing in joy. It's real. Usopp and Chopper gasped. Luffy looked at them with a stern look. Didn't you have faith in your captain? He asked in a scolding voice. They looked at him with guilty expressions, but then he chuckled and jumped towards them, taking their hands. Sky Island, he exclaimed, and they started dancing around the deck. The next who got up was Robin, who looked around the ship and couldn't believe what she saw for a moment. Then she just smiled. The last to get up were Zoro and Sanji, and that was because they competed who would get up first and kept preventing each other from standing up. Oh, Luffy exclaimed and suddenly let go of his two dancing partners. I hope no one is stupid enough to go swimming here. If you do, you'll fall back down on the ground line. Nami's eyes again widened and she took a step back. Luffy looked at her with an annoyed expression. Really? He asked her and sighed. Robin chuckled. Luffy, you? She started. He put an arm on her mouth. Zoro's eyes widened. Nami, if you finish that sentence, I'm leaving the next enemy to you, he told her. Okay? She nodded meekly and he let go of her mouth. Zoro chuckled as she remained quiet. Hey, don't talk that way to Nami Swan, Sanji yelled at him. Luffy turned to him and looked at him with a confused expression. What way? He asked. Sanji glared at him. Don't order her around, he told him. Luffy blinked a few times. But I'm the captain. That's what I do, he told him. Sanji opened his mouth to say something, but he closed it. You're right, Luffy. You're the captain, Zoro told him with a smirk on his face. Sanji glared at him. You can order us around, especially the dark bro over here. Shitty Marimo, Sanji replied. Shitty cook, Zoro retorted. You want to fight, stupid swordsman. Sanji yelled and put his face right into Zoro's. You can't match me, stupid dark bro, Zoro yelled back, pushing him away. Shut up, Nami yelled and punched both of them on the head. Hi, Nami Swan, Sanji replied in his beaten-up state. Stupid witch, Zoro growled. Robin clapped her hands a few times in applause. Thank you, Robin, Nami told her and took a small bow. My pleasure, the archaeologist replied and giggled. Then they suddenly heard a splash. A huge fish rose from the water and jumped right at the Mary to take a bite. Gear third, Luffy announced. Everyone looked at him, wondering what he'd do. Luffy took his right hand to his mouth and bit into the thumb. Then he took a deep breath and blew lots of air into it to the surprise and shock of his nakama. The hand grew in size until it was as large as that of a giant. Sanji dropped his cigarette. Luffy then, ignoring his gaping nakama, grabbed the approaching fish by the neck and stopped it. Then he just threw it into the distance. He turned around and saw his still gaping nakama. Hello, he said and waved the now deflated hand in front of their faces. What was that, Luffy? Zoro asked. Luffy smirked proudly. That's gear third, he answered. Since I'm rubber I can enlarge my bones by putting air into them. How is that possible? Usopp asked. Luffy shrugged. I'm rubber, he answered. Everyone blinked a few times. Then another, but larger fish also tried to attack the Mary, but Luffy just punched it away casually. As the fish flew away, another much smaller fish fell onto the deck. Robin picked it up. Would you say this is a skyfish? She asked. The strange fish Norland mentioned in his journal? Since the sea has no bottom, they must have evolved various adaptations to survive. Luffy walked up to her and took the little fish out of her hands. Looks tasty, he muttered. He ignored Robin, Zoro and Nami as they talked about the topic further and just handed it to Sanji, who quickly cooked it. Luffy took a bite. This is so good, he announced. Nami sighed and slapped her head. We weren't done, you know, she told him. Try it, Luffy told her. She took a bite. You're right, she chirped out, it's delicious. I'm glad you like it, Nami-san, Sanji thanked her. Let's eat a big one too, Luffy announced. Sanji shrugged. Just find one, he told him. Luffy turned to Robin and handed her the plate. She looked at him. You caught it, so try it, he told her and grinned. Nami's eyes widened again and she took a step back. You're sharing food? She screeched out. She, you're so funny, Nami, Luffy told her. She blinked a few times. I'm funny? She asked with a confused expression. Luffy nodded. Nami imitation, he announced. He put his hands in front of him as if trying to push something away and gained a comically shocked expression. He took several steps back. Nami's eye twitched. Oh no, what did you do with Luffy? Luffy exclaimed in a fake Nami voice. Robin nearly spat out the fish she was chewing as she barely contained her laughter. Usopp and Chopper however were already rolling on the floor. Hey, I don't talk that way, Nami yelled and slapped him. Luffy then suddenly sensed a relatively strong aura approach them. He looked into the distance and saw a ship getting destroyed. What is it? Nami asked. Luffy looked at her. Someone is approaching, he told her. In a few moments, a masked man who seemed to ride on top of the cloud sea appeared in front of them. "Oi, you there," Sanji called. "What do you want?" "I shall reject you," the man declared. "He wants a fight," Sanji told them. Zoro took out his katana. "Fine by me," he replied. The man then slammed into Sanji, sending him flying into the ground. He jumped up and kicked Zoro, who was just about to slash him. He jumped back in the air and attempted to kick Luffy into the ground, but Luffy sidestepped and avoided him. "Armament," Luffy murmured. He stretched out his palm and slapped the man away, sending him flying into the distance. "Damn jerk," he muttered, and his armament disappeared. Then another man appeared out of the sky. He rode a weird, pink bird with purple circles. He wore a shiny silver armor and he had a silver lance as a weapon. "Weird night," Luffy thought and grinned. The man landed on the railing of the ship. "So it seems you didn't need my help," he said simply. "What is going on?" Nami asked. She glanced at the two members of the monster trio, who laid on the ground. "What are you two doing?" "Don't blame them, Nami," Luffy told her. "It's just that the air here is much thinner than down below." "Right, now that I think about it," Zoro confirmed. Nami looked at Luffy. "How come you aren't affected?" she asked. He grinned. "Training," he replied. "Are you blue sea dwellers?" the knight asked. "Yes," Luffy answered. Nami looked at him oddly. "Blue sea dwellers?" she asked. Luffy looked at her. "This is known as the White Sea and the sea below is known as the Blue Sea," he told her. He looked at the knight, right? The knight looked at him in surprise. "You seem to know some things about this place," he replied. "Were you here before?" Luffy shook his head. "No, but I've heard about it from someone who was," he replied. The knight quirked an eyebrow. "Shanks, apprentice of Goldie Roger." The knight's eyes widened. "So you've met him?" Luffy asked after seeing his surprised expression. The knight nodded. "How is Roger doing? Is he well?" the knight asked. Luffy sighed. "I'm afraid he's gone," Luffy replied. "He became the Pirate King, and then he was executed visibly." "That's too bad. He and his band were a good bunch. I'm sorry to hear they're gone," he replied. "Oh, but they're not all gone," Luffy told him. He looked up in surprise. The crew also looked at Luffy. "Most of them are still alive." "But how, Captain San? The government said they were all captured," Robin interrupted. Luffy shook his head. "They weren't captured," he told them. Everyone gasped at the revelation. The Pirate King surrendered. Luffy ignored the shocked expressions and continued. "Silvers, Rayleigh, Shanks and Buggy all still live," he told them. Nami and Zoro looked at him with wide-eyed expressions. "Why, you're kidding, right?" Nami asked. Luffy looked at her and shook his head. Zoro blinked a few times. "Buggy was one of the Pirate King's nakama?" he asked after a few moments. Luffy nodded. "A cabin boy, like Shanks," he answered. Both of them shook their heads. "Every herd has a black sheep," Sanji offered. They both nodded repeatedly. "Who's Buggy?" Robin asked. Everyone looked at her. "An East Blue pirate," Sanji told her. "A nobody basically. Somewhere on the Grand Line, a certain red-nosed pirate got the sudden urge to murder someone." "Ah, by the way, what's your name?" Luffy asked. "I'm the Knight of the Sky, Gonfall. And this is my partner Pierre," he replied. "So, seeing how you don't need my help, I'll take my leave." "Wait," Nami yelled after him. He stopped. "What do you mean help?" "This is a service," he answered. "This is a dangerous land. I make my living as a knight for hire. I give this whistle to whoever wants my help, and if you blow it I come to your aid. I hope this doesn't sound wrong. But for a fee of 5,000,000 extols," the knight added. Everyone's sweat dropped as the fee seemed outrageously high. "I think we'd like to take the whistle," Luffy answered. "I can't be everywhere at once after all." "I see," the knight replied. "Here you go." He threw him the whistle and Luffy caught it. "Since you told me about Roger's fate, I'll give you one service for free," the knight replied. "But every next service will cost 5,000,000 extols." "What are you talking about, old man?" Sanji asked. "What's this extol thing?" Gonfall gasped and sweated. "You mean you didn't come here from High West?" he asked. Everyone looked at him oddly. But you must have at least stopped by 1 or 2 islands? Hold on, Nami interrupted. You mean there are other ways to get up here? And what do you mean 1 or 2 islands? There are more of them? You mean that you, Gonfall began. We rode the knock-up stream. Robin interrupted. His eyes widened again. You mean that monstrous current? He asked. To think that there are still souls brave enough to do that. I knew it wasn't a normal route. Nami cried. She grabbed Luffy's cardigan and shook it. I thought we were going to die. If we had gathered more information we'd have an easier trip. It's all your fault? But it was fun, wasn't it, Nami? Luffy asked cheerfully. Gonfall resisted the urge to sweat drop. Have you lost any of your crew? He asked. Nope, Luffy replied cheerfully. I see. The knight replied. But the other routes would not have been so merciful. Here you either all die or all survive. After a few more minutes of conversation, the Knight of the Sky left on his bird/horse partner and the Straw Hats continued to their destination. 39. Angelic Hosts. HESO. A blonde-haired girl dressed in a pink outfit with white wings on her back greeted with a somewhat sad smile. The Straw Hats noticed her and all turned around to look at her. Sanji immediately had a heart in his eye. Sue, come here. The girl called and the little white fox that Luffy and Chopper were playing with ran towards her. Are you from the Blue Sea? She asked. Everyone nodded. Yes, we came from down there. Luffy replied. Do you live here? Yes, I do. She replied. Welcome to Skypay's Angel Beach? She noticed the big melon that Luffy had on the ground. Would you like to drink that? She asked. He nodded. She motioned for him to give her the melon and he complied. The top of a Kanashu is as hard as steel, she explained. She pulled out a small knife. But you can easily cut through the bottom. She turned the melon around and cut a small hole in the middle. She put a straw in it and gave it to Luffy. Here, she said and smiled kindly. He took it and did a sip. This is as good as I remember it. He thought. So good, he yelled out. It wasn't an exaggeration. The juice in the melon was really good. Is it really so good? Usopp asked. Luffy nodded and gave it to him. Usopp tried it and confirmed Luffy's words. Luffy looked up to the girl. Could we take a few of those? He asked her. She smiled. Sure, we have a lot here, she replied. But, oh, where are my manners? I'm Conus and this is Sue, a cloud fox. Should you need anything, please let me know. About that. Sanji began. The look in your eyes has pierced my heart. Nami pulled his ear and pulled him away. OWW, Nami Swan, is this jealousy? He asked in his love-dazed state. Humph. You wish. She told him and he deflated and started sulking on the ground. Robin chuckled upon seeing that. He instantly jumped back up. Is perhaps my Robin Schwan jealous? He asked and started twirling around her. Not at all, Cook-san. She's all yours. Foo, she told him. He deflated again, having been refused by the both of the ladies. Che. Hopeless dark bro. Zoro muttered. A vein popped on Sanji's head. What was that, Marimo? He replied and stood up. I said you're hopeless, shitty cook, Zoro told him. And then they started fighting. Usopp and Nami sighed. Chopper watched in awe and Robin ignored them. But then, Luffy started laughing his full-blown laughter. Not his trademark, she, but a roaring laugh. Everyone was startled by this and they looked at him. Even the two who were fighting. What's so funny, Luffy? Usopp asked in confusion. Luffy finally stopped then and got up. She, sorry, it's just that they look like a quarreling couple. Everyone blinked a few times and after a while they were all on the ground, laughing their asses off. Even the stoic Robin had a good laugh and Conus actually joined them. Why you? They both seethed at the same time. Ha. Look, they're totally the same, Usopp told them. I'm not the same as the disgusting Marimo. I'm not the same as the perverted love cook. They both yelled at the same time. See, Usopp's right, Luffy cheerfully replied and fell down laughing, along with the rest of his crew. Luffy, both of them muttered darkly and jumped at him, attempting to beat him up. Luffy of course dodged or blocked every move while laughing all the time. Hey guys, stop fighting, Nami yelled after finally picking herself up. Hey Nami, Luffy yelled. Look at this, everyone looked at him. Stop it, shitty captain, Sanji yelled. Luffy gained an evil grin as he dodged his kick. The two rivals paled upon seeing it. He put both of his hands together with only his index fingers extended and made them almost touch each other. Your cooking is shitty, dark bro, Luffy imitated with his best Zoro voice whilst moving his right index finger. Not as shitty as your swordsmanship, Marimo. Luffy imitated in his Sanji voice, whilst moving the left index finger. Then he put the two fingers together, rubbing them against each other, while imitating kissing sounds. And everyone was on the ground once again, ha 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 ha. Luffy, ha ha ha. My stomach, Usopp laughed, the rest weren't much better. The two rivals started attacking more and more furiously and all the while, Luffy was laughing. The least affected was Robin, who, while laughing uncharacteristically long and loud, for herself, was still standing. While she didn't have anything against a good laugh, she knew that with their stamina and Luffy's endless supply of immature jokes, this could take a while. So she diffused the situation the only way she could think of. Foo 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 foo. Stop being a bad boy, Captain San, she told them. The reaction was immediate. Everyone quieted down and was gaping at her like a fish in disbelief. Did I hear that right? Nami wondered aloud. Are you feeling sick, Robin? Usopp asked. Doctor, doctor. Someone call a doctor, Chopper yelled. Why did Robin Schwan say that? Sanji asked in a puzzled expression. Zoro and Luffy, who had already heard her say that, just stared at her. There was silence for a few moments and then. She. My crew is so funny. Luffy laughed and then took the melon from the ground and started drinking from the straw. Everyone sighed, finally freed from their painful laughter. Konis-san, Hesso, someone yelled from far away, startling everyone. Hesso, father, Konis yelled back. Her father was using some sort of device to travel on the sea cloud and Nami noticed it. Hey, what is that thing? The thing he's riding on? She asked. Konis looked at her. Oh, that's a waiver. Konis replied and smiled. Waiver? Nami repeated. Hey, I'm sorry, the father yelled. I'm stopping now. And stop he did, right in the nearest tree, while nearly hitting some of the crew. Is everyone okay? He asked. Everyone's sweat dropped. What about you? Zoro yelled. Hey Luffy, didn't you bring something like that from the ocean floor? Nami asked Luffy, who was drinking from his melon. Yes, I did. Luffy put the waiver in the same bag as his poor armor. A few minutes, waiver riding and conversations later. They sat down on the sofas, cloud sofas, in the living room of their hosts. Ah, but we're so rude. Luffy suddenly exclaimed while they were relaxing in their seats. We haven't even introduced ourselves. Everyone looked at him. The guy with the long nose is Usopp. Luffy began and pointed at Usopp. It's Captain Usopp, he announced. You mean vice captain when I'm asleep? Zoro reminded him with a smirk and he deflated somewhat. That cool-looking reindeer is Chopper, Luffy announced and pointed at him. Bastard, I'm not happy even if you compliment me, jerk, Chopper replied while dancing his awkward little dance. Everyone's sweat dropped. That guy with green hair and scary face is Zoro, he said and pointed at Zoro. Shut up, he complained. That guy with the funny eyebrow is Sanji, Luffy announced and pointed at him. Konis-chan, I'm at your hey, what did you say? Luffy ignored him while Zoro chuckled. They nearly started a fight, but Robin broke them apart. The mean-looking redhead using the waiver is Nami, he said and pointed at the White Sea. Mean-looking, everyone repeated. And the mysterious-looking girl is Robin. Luffy said and pointed at Robin. She quirked an eyebrow. Mysterious-looking, Captain San? She asked with a somewhat wide-eyed expression. He nodded. You're mysterious, Robin. He replied. Kinda like those poneglyph stones you're searching for. Poneglyph. She corrected him. Right, he nodded. And I'm Luffy, he said with a big grin and pointed at himself. Konis smiled at their introductions. It's nice to meet you all, she told them and smiled. Konis-san? Robin began after a moment of silence. Could you perhaps tell us about the dials you mentioned earlier? A few minutes and a basic explanation of dials later. Hey, Konis. Luffy began after listening to her explanations and seeing her demonstrations of dial use. She looked at him. On below on the White Sea. He said he was going to reject us. Does that have anything to do with dials? She looked down for a minute. There is a war going on here on Skypia. Well, nothing has happened for a while, but it soon will. She started. Her and her father's faces fell. There are 3 types of dials that are used almost exclusively for combat: axe, impact, and reject. She stopped for a moment. Axe dials are used for cutting your opponents, while impact deliver blunt force to the opponent. Reject is a stronger version of that dial. Conus continued. Reject dials are said to be 10 times stronger than impact ones, but they harm the user. It's unlikely for a normal man to survive wielding a reject dial. Everyone's eyes widened. Luffy gained a thoughtful expression. So then, it's unlikely he was actually going to use an actual reject dial? Sanji asked. That's right. Conus replied. Even if he somehow found one, it's doubtful he would use it. The reject dial could be very useful in Marineford if it comes to it. Luffy thought. Then he raised his head in determination. Yosh, I've decided, he announced. I want a reject dial. Everyone looked at him in shock. Conus and her father paled at his words. Why, you can't be serious. Conus stuttered. Didn't you just hear what I said? Luffy looked at her with a determined expression. But I'm rubber, blunt attacks can't hurt me, he told her. She looked at him oddly. I ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi, one of the devil fruits. He told her after a moment. She looked surprised. And blunt damage means like a punch, right? Punches don't hurt me. I suppose that could work. Sanji spoke with a thoughtful expression. Well, Conus began again. Even if it wouldn't harm you, there's still the matter of finding it. It's very rare. It's possible nobody has it. Luffy deflated somewhat, but after a moment he regained his smile. Well, maybe we'll get lucky, he announced. There was silence for a few moments. Hey, where is Nami-san? Sanji, who stood on the balcony, asked. Everyone looked at him oddly. Shouldn't she be using the waiver? Usopp asked. Father, will she be okay? Conus asked. He put down his fork. Yes, Conus-san. I also feel a bit unsettled, he replied. Why? Luffy asked. What's wrong? Conus turned to him. Here on Skypia, there is a place you must never ever set foot on under any circumstances. She replied with a serious expression. Everyone looked at her. A place where you must never set foot on? Usopp asked. Why is that? It's sacred ground. Conus told the. Sacred ground? Robin repeated. Conus nodded. We call that place the land where God resides, Upper Yard, she told them. Luffy stood up. The place where God resides, he repeated. A place where we must never set foot on? She nodded. By God, do you mean the God? Chopper asked. God lives here? She nodded with a troubled expression. Luffy looked at his crew members and his eyes met Robin's. It seems they both noticed her change in demeanor. Yes, because Skypia is God's land. It's ruled by the Almighty God, Enel, she replied. Almighty, eh? Luffy thought and smirked. Quite an ego problem you have there, Enel. In the corner of his eyes he could see Zoro also smirking. God Enel knows everything that goes on in this world. Conus continued. He wondered if she actually believed that herself. Everything? Usopp asked. Everything, Conus confirmed. What, even right now? Chopper asked. He's watching us right now. Humph. God, eh? Zoro huffed with an unimpressed sounding voice. Zoro, you don't believe in God? Chopper asked. Zoro shrugged. Dunno. I don't care if he exists or not, he replied. It never mattered to me one bit. Not that I have anything against anyone that wants to believe. Have you seen this God, Conus? Luffy asked. No, I've never seen him, Conus replied, waving her hands in front of her face. We can't set foot on Upper Yard. Luffy suddenly walked up to the balcony. When he turned around, he had stars in his eyes. Is that so? He asked with a voice barely containing excitement. A place where we must never ever set foot on? Usopp cringed, while Chopper looked at him in awe. Zoro and Robin seemed amused. Hey, Luffy! Usopp yelled and started shaking his cardigan. What are you thinking right now? Listen to what she's saying. Robin glanced at Conus and her father, who surprisingly didn't seem to be offended one bit. They actually had resigned, somewhat solemn expressions. What is the punishment for entering? Robin asked after a few moments. You will not return alive, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. The father told them. The cowardly duo present cringed at this. It's sacrilege, so God will punish you. I'm sorry. How? Luffy asked. They looked at him bewildered. Excuse me? Conus asked. Luffy looked at her with a thoughtful expression. How does God punish those who break his laws? Luffy asked. Then suddenly as she started to speak, he felt a familiar discharge of energy in the near distance and a man dying. Never mind. Luffy interrupted. Lightning, right? Everyone looked at him in surprise. Conus and her father seemed shocked. How did you? She started. I just felt someone die on upper yard by lightning. Luffy interrupted. Felt? Conus asked with a wide-eyed expression. You have mantra? Luffy nodded. The crew looked at them with surprised expressions. It's known as observation haki on the Blue Sea, Luffy said after sensing their confusion. Never mind that, Sanji yelled. It wasn't Nami Swan, right? He said and gritted his teeth. Luffy shook his head. She hasn't entered upper yard. She's afraid though. She'll probably return here soon, he explained. Everyone sighed in relief. Wait, Zoro exclaimed. You can sense all the way up there? Luffy nodded. Good observation haki users have a long range of vision. Somewhere in the sky, Enel smirked. Yahahaha, how interesting, he exclaimed. A mantra user from the Blue Sea. Would you like some apples, Kami-sama? An attractive woman asked and offered him a golden plate full of them. Oh, you are just too kind. Yahahaha. 40. The jerks that protect and serve. You're the 7 illegal entrants from the Blue Sea, right? The captain of the crawling weirdos, known as the White Berets, asked. We are here to bestow heaven's judgment upon you. The two hosts were shocked by those words. Illegal entrants? Pagaya, the father of Conus, asked. The Straw Hats stared at the group of enforcers. Illegal entrants? Luffy asked. Conus and her father looked at them. Is it true? Pagaya asked in fear. There's no use denying it, the enforcer chief announced and pulled a few pictures from his pocket. They turned out to be pictures of the Straw Hats. The Heaven's Gate lookout, Amazon, has taken these pictures with her vision dial. No, that isn't possible. Pagaya defended them. That must be some mistake, Captain McKinley, they aren't bad people. Why is he calling us illegal entrants for? Sanji asked. Robin looked at him. Well, he's probably referring to the billion extols we were each supposed to pay. We certainly didn't do that, she told him. But that old woman said we could pass without paying. Usopp defended. Chopper confirmed this. It'll do you no good, the captain of the enforcers replied. Please, no excuses. Just accept your guilt. However, there is no need for worry. Everyone looked at him. Illegal entry is a minor, class 11 crime. The man continued. Once you've received your punishment, you can return to the status of peaceful tourists. Well, why didn't you say so sooner? Sanji answered. I'm still not too happy about it, but what's this punishment? You simply need to pay 10 times the entry fee, which would be 70 billion extol for all 7 of you. The man answered. If you pay immediately, your crime will be immediately erased. How much is that in berry? Usopp asked. Berry, the man repeated. The currency of the Blue Sea, right? I believe 10.000 extol equals 1 berry. So that means you're required to pay 7.000.000 berry. Sanji's cigarette dropped from his mouth. That's too much, Sanji yelled. Do you know how much food I could buy with that? I second that. Luffy interjected. Sanji glared at him and then looked back at the captain of the enforcers. Why do we have to pay such a ridiculous amount when we risked our lives to get up here? Sanji finished. McKinley sighed. In that case, you should have just paid the entry fee of 700.000 berry, he told them. That's still too expensive, Sanji yelled with a twitch in his eye. Now let me warn you. The captain began. We White Berets act under direct orders from the priests. Refusal will increase the severity of your punishment. After a while, the Straw Hats dispersed, though everyone except Sanji stayed close. Sanji went to bring a few of those melons. The enforcer then noticed the ruined waver that they possessed. That waver there seems to be broken, he announced. If that's your doing, that's a class 10 offense. Destruction of Sky Island property by Blue Sea dwellers, that is. No, no, I'm sorry. Pagaya interrupted. That's actually their property. Their property? McKinley asked. That's quite suspicious. There aren't supposed to be any waivers on the Blue Sea. If it was stolen, it would be class. We didn't steal it. Luffy interrupted. We found in a ship that fell from the White Sea. That's highly questionable. McKinley replied and sighed, but I guess it's possible. Then Luffy ran towards Usopp, who was trying to catch a fish with his fishing pole. This should be fun. Luffy thought and smirked. Usopp then seemed to have caught something. He tried to pull it, but it was too much for him. A good catch, eh, Usopp? Luffy commented and patted Usopp on the back. Usopp smiled and continued pulling. Luffy and Chopper joined to help him pull it up, but when they finally succeeded, the fish jumped out from the sea, freeing itself from the fishing pole. The fish headed straight for Konis with its mouth wide open, the intention obvious. Konis screamed in fear. Zoro jumped in the air and hit the fish with the back of his sword and then kicked it down into the ground. Everyone ran towards the fish and looked at it. What is that? Usopp questioned. Another funky fish. Chopper answered. It was about to eat Konis. So this is another type of skyfish? Zoro questioned. Ah, excuse me. Pagaya interrupted their conversation. Thank you for saving Konis-san. Father, that fish, Konis began. Well, McKinley announced in a reprimanding tone. This is a rare type of skyfish. Its capture is prohibited. You have violated the law protecting rare species. That a Class 9 crime. Luffy smirked again. Robin noticed that. How is that a crime? Usopp asked. It was attacking Konis. McKinley laughed. Zoro, did you finish it off? Usopp asked. Zoro shook his head. No, hit it with the back of the sword, he replied. Usopp sighed in relief. Then if we release it, there's no harm done? Usopp asked. He kicked the fish and it woke up and started moving its tail. Yosh, Luffy announced and drool started leaking from his mouth. He stretched over to the fish, getting Usopp out of the way. Then he opened his mouth wide. There, you can't deny now that you were trying to eat it, McKinley announced, a bit too happily for everyone's tastes. But contrary to everyone's expectations, Luffy blew some air at the bump on the head of the fish. He then turned around and looked confused at McKinley. Almost everyone freaked out because of Luffy's uncharacteristic behavior. As they did so, Luffy smirked smugly. Is he mocking me? McKinley thought. Robin also noticed his smirk. Was he planning this? She thought with widened eyes. Zoro, however, was less than pleased by the man's constant crime accusations. He gripped his katana. Standing around listening to this guy go on and on about bullshit crimes is pissing me off. Zoro spoke in a low tone. If he doesn't stop it. Usopp grabbed Zoro and restrained him. Your behavior right now was quite threatening. McKinley began with a smirk. Such behavior is deserving of Class 7 crime. Sorry. Luffy interrupted with a smirk of his own. Everyone looked at him. But you have no way of knowing what Zoro would have said. For all you know, he meant to say that he was going to slap you with a banana or give you a tissue. Everyone of the crew stared wide-eyed at Luffy. He was gripping his weapon, McKinley defended. Luffy shook his head. Zoro's white katana is from his friend. Luffy began. He often touches it to make sure it's still there. But, McKinley tried to say. So you really have no reason to punish us. Luffy finished with a huge mocking grin. We're still on Class 11. McKinley gritted his teeth in anger. Every straw hat eye that was present was bulged out. How can Navigator-san and Cook-san possibly think this man is stupid? Robin mused with a slightly parted mouth. Ah, guys? Luffy asked with a large grin as he turned around. What did I say? Nothing, everyone muttered while waving their hands in front of their faces. Something's fishy here, Chopper yelled. He's trying to make us look more guilty. Usopp nearly got a heart attack. Chopper, he yelled at his friend. Don't say things that'll make it worse. But we can't do anything with them around, Chopper yelled. Usopp suddenly got a light bulb. Anything? He repeated. Then he punched his fist into his palm. Then let's not do anything, let's take a nap. Everyone except Robin laid on the ground and started snoring. Both their friends and the captain's sweat dropped. Making such a contemptuous sound at the serene Angel Beach. McKinley began once again. You're guilty of environmental pollution. This is a Class 6 crime. Oi, you can't even snore? Usopp yelled in disbelief. These laws are ridiculous. Robin thought. Zoro gripped his katana. Usopp jumped in front of him to prevent him from attacking. Yes, but, Luffy began with another mocking smirk. We weren't actually hurting or disrupting anything. You were disrupting us, McKinley said and pointed Otto hosts. Conus and her father didn't seem to mind us sleeping. Neither did their pet. Luffy replied with a smile. McKinley again gritted his teeth. What about us? He yelled and pointed at himself and the officers far behind. Luffy grinned. You're enforcers. You haven't come here to relax. Luffy continued. McKinley's face reddened in anger. You've come here to make us look guilty. Everyone looked at Luffy in shock. Like I thought. Robin concluded in her thoughts. He knew all along. Hey everyone! Sanji yelled from the nearby forest, carrying lots of melons in his hands. What are you doing? Oh, Sanji. Chopper started. Wait a minute. Nami yelled from the distance, interrupting them. Nami Swan. Sanji yelled with a heart in his eye. You're safe. Luffy, don't make these guys mad. She yelled as she approached them with the waver. Luffy rolled his eyes and sighed in irritation. He didn't reply though. Nami, use your money to pay the 7.000.000 berry illegal entrance fee, Usopp yelled. That's great, she replied. So this can be settled if we just pay a fine. Then her eyes darkened. 7.000.000 berry, that's. She crashed into McKinley. Way too much, she yelled with shark teeth. Luffy face palmed and Robin as well as Zoro chuckled at his reaction. What crime level are we now? Zoro asked Conus as Nami returned the waiver to her father. Class 5, obstruction of a public servant, Conus answered. Good, it's still only 5, Usopp sighed in relief. It's not good, she yelled, it's death sentence. WHAAAT? After a few minutes, I'm telling you, Luffy, it's too dangerous, Nami said. Luffy just smirked and put a hand on her shoulder. City of Gold, Nami, he told her, but it's too dangerous, she yelled. A billion berry, Nami, he said. No, maybe not just a billion, maybe billions. Her eyes turned into berry. Everyone's sweat dropped. Please run away, Conus yelled from the distance. Surrounding her and her father were the white berets. Hurry. That's enough, young lady, McKinley began. Know that if you aid these criminals, you could become one yourself. He smirked. For repeated abusive language towards us and the obstruction of a public servant, you are sentenced to cloud drifting, he announced. But I said it was an accident, Nami yelled. Zoro shook his head. Really, Nami? Couldn't you have reacted a bit less violently? He asked. She glared at him. You guys have nothing to talk about, she yelled. I bet you did all sorts of crimes while I was gone. Actually, Robin began. Nami looked at her with widened eyes. Captain San had the situation well under control until you came, Navigator San. What? She yelled and pointed at Luffy who seemed to be getting annoyed. Him. Yes, him, Navigator San. Robin confirmed. Nami sighed. So, this is all my fault? She asked. Yes. Everyone answered at the same time, except Sanji who didn't say anything. That's way too blunt. Nami yelled at them. Arrest them, McKinley yelled. The enforcers raised their bows and fired some unusual-looking arrows. Everyone somehow dodged those arrows, but it became clear that hitting them was not the real intention. The arrows created some sort of cloud paths in the air. The enforcers used the clouds in combination with their skate-like dial-powered footwear to gain an advantage. They each carried 2 blades. Luffy just sat down and let his nakama deal with them, occasionally dodging a swipe aimed at him. A few minutes later, Luffy, Sanji and Usopp watched into the distance as the giant speedy crab took their ship and the rest of their nakama with it. Luffy glanced at Conus who wore a guilty and sad expression. 41. I have no idea what to name this. Luffy, Sanji, Usopp and Conus had just made their way through Lovely Street. As expected, everyone did their best to avoid them. Then they finally reached the boats and Conus offered them her own. Oi, Conus. Luffy began. Why have you been trembling all this time? Conus's eyes widened in horror and she started sweating. The people watching them also paled. "That guy," said Captain McKinley, who watched hidden behind a pillar, "he wouldn't." "Does it look that way?" Conus asked. Luffy nodded. "Yeah, almost like you're afraid of something," he answered. "He wouldn't, he can't," the captain whispered. "Conus Schwan, you must be worried about us," Sanji announced cheerfully. "That's so sweet of you." Conus smiled in relief. "But are you guys going to be okay?" Usopp asked. "The people in town all avoided us, but you're lending us your boat, and you even told us the way. Isn't this going to make you look like an accomplice?" Conus sweated. She had a troubled expression. "You look pale." Luffy added, "If you were scared, you could have stayed at home." She gulped. Everyone looked at the scene in shock. "No," she said after a moment. She hesitated. It's not what you think." She looked at him. "It did seem strange, didn't it? Politely telling you the route to the ordeals. Coming with you here. All while saying the ordeals are more fearsome than death. As if I was leading you here." "You, stop," McKinley yelled. "Don't say anything." People started backing away as far as they could, even though they were already a good distance away from her. Sanji looked at them. Could it be, are they all in on this? He thought. He turned back to her. Luffy's gaze did not leave Conus. She bit her lip. She seemed both sad, scared and most of all regretful. Suddenly she fell on the ground, now trembling uncontrollably. "Please get out of here," she yelled. She looked on the ground. "I'm so sorry." She started crying. "Stop," one of the onlookers yelled at her. "What are you saying?" another shouted. She started, but her words were muffled. Everyone looked in surprise as Luffy's outstretched hand covered her mouth. Everyone stared in bewilderment and shock at the Straw Hat Captain. "I saw," he said simply. Conus's eyes widened in shock at the simple words. His two crew members looked at him in confusion. He let go of her mouth. McKinley and the other onlookers looked at him in complete shock. "Then, you must hate me." She started. "Don't be an idiot." Luffy interrupted her. She looked at his face in shock. "You had no choice, right?" "Hey, Usopp began, but Sanji put a hand on his shoulder. Usopp looked at Sanji, who shook his head, preventing him from continuing. Conus nodded as more tears streamed down her face. Luffy crouched on the ground and to the surprise of everyone hugged her. "It's okay," he said to her. "I don't blame you." She nodded and looked on the ground. He stood up after a while and looked around. "I know you're listening, God." Luffy spoke, spitting out the last word like a curse. There was no need to involve Conus in such a way. In the shrine of God, high in the sky, Enel smirked to himself. "We'd have went regardless." Luffy continued. "I think I'll enjoy your shitty little challenges, they might be fun." Luffy just used the word, shitty, Usopp thought to himself. And why is he so eager to get us into trouble? I wonder what happened with Conus-chan. Sanji thought. McKinley, who stood behind the wall, shook his head. They're always this eager in the beginning, he thought. He saw Luffy smirked. "If you are God, NA or whatever your name is," Luffy continued, saying the name wrong on purpose. Everyone cringed upon hearing the mistake. "Then what do you call a man who defeats a god? You have until I reach you to think that out." Everyone stared in complete and utter shock at Luffy. He smirked. Meanwhile at the god's shrine, Enel stared at empty air for a few moments with a slightly shocked expression, but then he regained his arrogant smirk. "Yahahahaha. What delicious insolence," Enel yelled out. His hand was suddenly surrounded with electrical energy. "I'll show you the power of God, Straw Hat." He laughed some more. A few minutes later and an explanation later. So which door will we choose?" Usopp asked as they stood before 4 entrances. Luffy looked at him oddly. What?" he asked. "We have iron, strain, swamp and balls. Isn't the choice obvious?" Luffy asked. "How is it obvious?" Sanji asked with a confused expression. "Yeah, I don't get it either, Luffy," Usopp asked. Luffy blinked a few times and sighed. "Look, we're all guys, right?" he asked. They looked at him oddly. "What does that have to do with anything?" Sanji asked. Luffy shook his head in apparent annoyance. "We all have Kintama," Luffy whined. Both of his crew members blinked a few times. Then they both face-palmed. "I really don't get your sense of logic, Captain." Sanji sighed. Usopp looked at Luffy. "Balls of gold?" Really, Luffy? He asked in an annoyed voice. Luffy shrugged. She. I thought that's what everyone called them, he said. The two shook their heads. Anyway, shithead, Sanji began. Unless you have a better explanation for your choice, we're going to choose. No, Luffy yelled. They both looked at him in annoyance. Ball sounds fun, she. Fun? Sanji repeated. How so? I don't think ordeals are supposed to be fun, Luffy. Usopp said in a deadpanned expression. Well, maybe we'll have to play a game where we have to choose the right ball. Or we'll have to make sure a ball doesn't hit the ground or it'll explode, he explained. Sanji gained a thoughtful expression. Well, it's possible, he said after a moment of silence. Usopp sighed. I don't think it'll be as fun as Luffy thinks. Usopp replied. But I do think it sounds like the least dangerous. I mean, it's pretty easy to see how iron would be deadly. He cringed as he imagined a 100-ton weight falling on top of their little ship. It's pretty obvious what swamp does, he imagined himself sinking. String doesn't sound too bad, but then again. He imagined himself trying to get across to the other side by only using a rope connected on both ends with only empty space beneath them. Balls sounds okay, but that could be a trick, he finished. Well, balls it is, then, Sanji announced and took their tiny little dial boat to the right. They entered the entrance and found themselves in a dark tunnel. Luffy smirked as he remembered something. It was dark, so they didn't see it. You know, guys, he began. This reminds me of something. They looked in his direction. What? Usopp asked. Luffy grinned. You know how there were 4 doors? He asked with a grin. Why yes. Usopp confirmed, getting a worse feeling every second. One of them is a prize door and the rest are all losing ones, Luffy replied. Huh, what the hell? Usopp yelled. Why are you saying that now? What if we chose wrong? Well, Luffy continued, pretending to think about it. If we're wrong, we'll probably fall off the Sky Island. She. I'm not falling off anything. Usopp yelled with razor-sharp teeth. You know, it's 10.000 meters from here to the Blue Sea. Do you know how many times life would flash before your eyes during that fall? Luffy just laughed joyfully. Enough of this dumb shit, Sanji announced. There's no way th. And at that moment they fell. Luffy just grinned while the faces of the other two changed to ones of pure horror. No, Usopp yelled with bulged eyes. This can't be happening. Luffy laughed like a maniac. After a moment, they hit the river on the bottom. For several moments, both Usopp and Sanji breathed like they were drowning moments ago. We're alive. Sanji gasped out. Usopp was in the worst state. Her lay on the ship, crying comically. I thought, he mumbled. I'm going to die. She. That was too fun, Luffy shouted. We should do that again, she. No, Usopp yelled. Sanji kept kicking Luffy in the head. This is your fault, he yelled. It's all because of your dumbass story. She. Were you scared, Sanji? Luffy asked. Sanji huffed. I wasn't scared, Sanji said in an unconvincing voice. I was startled. She. Sanji was scared, Luffy yelled. Sanji kicked him angrily. I said I wasn't scared, he roared. Luffy laughed. I'll have to tell Zoro about this, she, he continued. Don't you dare, I mean I wasn't scared, Sanji yelled and kicked him again. It's all your fault anyway. She. Sorry, Sanji. Luffy apologized insincerely. Sanji sighed and stepped over to the driver's seat and sat down. Anyway, what's all this? He asked as he looked around. There were white balls everywhere. Are you stupid, Sanji? Luffy yelled. Sanji gained a tick above his eye. It's balls. Balls. It's the ordeal of balls. I know that, shithead, Sanji yelled and barely prevented himself from standing up and kicking the rubber captain again. Anyway, he sighed as he continued. Those seem to be little balls of island cloud. Luffy laughed. Awesome, he said in an excited tone. They look like huge snowballs. This place is so weird. It's funny. She. And the Milky Road is going up the trees. Sanji continued. Luffy scratched his head. But what's the ordeal here? He asked, although he already knew the answer. No idea. Sanji replied. It'd be great if nothing happened, but I doubt we'll be so lucky. Lucky? Luffy repeated. How would missing all the fun and excitement be lucky? Well, you have a point there. Sanji agreed. Usopp, who just recovered from his panic attack, shook his head. You guys aren't normal. Usopp whispered. Luffy looked at him oddly. You aren't normal, Usopp. He told him. Usopp looked at him with confusion. What do you mean? He asked him. Luffy sat down on the boat. Well, we're not afraid because we're really strong, right? He asked. Usopp nodded. Isn't that pretty normal? Usopp gained a thoughtful expression. I guess it is. He said after a while. But why am I the abnormal one? I'm scared. That's normal too. Luffy looked at him with a soft smile. Well, I for example aren't scared because I know that whatever happens, I probably won't die. Luffy continued. But you don't know that, and yet you're still here with us. But I run away all the time. Usopp told him honestly for once. Even though our friends are in danger, the only thing I wanted to do in Lovely Street was run away. Yes, you run away, Luffy told him, but then you stop. Usopp looked at him with a shocked expression, but he started to say. It's much more brave to fight when you're afraid than when you aren't. Even if you do run away at first. Luffy told him with a grin. Luffy, Usopp whispered. Sanji, who was at the steering wheel, shook his head with a small smile of his own. Anyway, let's eat, Luffy announced. Wait to ruin a moment, Luffy, Sanji shouted. Then he sighed. And you're not eating. We're in enemy territory here, so keep a lookout. He continued driving the little boat towards the destination. Usopp, pass, Luffy said and threw him the little cloud ball lightly. His friend hit the ball back lightly. Luffy returned him the ball. Suddenly a snake appeared out of the ball and tried to bite Usopp, who barely dodged. Luffy punched the ball away. She, surprise balls. This is going to be fun, Luffy announced in an excited tone. I said to keep a lookout, Sanji yelled at them, but when he turned back to steering, a giant cloud ball appeared in front of him. Shitty balls. He yelled and stood up. It's golden balls, Sanji, Luffy whined. Sanji's eye twitched. Shut up, he yelled at him. He tried to kick the big ball away, but it only moved a little bit. Then it exploded right in his face. Ho, hoo, so, do you like my surprise balls? A high-pitched voice asked. Everyone looked up. On top of a big cloud ball sat a very round man with yellow glasses, red hair and a simple straw hat. Thank you for choosing my ordeal of balls. Ho, hoo, the man told them. Everyone's sweat dropped. Did that ball just speak? Luffy asked. Hey, that's rude. 42. Without visible, bushy chest hair, one of the priests of God Enel, the round man of the appropriately named ordeal of balls, jumped around on his own personal floating ball. Stop dancing, Sanji yelled with razor-sharp teeth. Aren't the priests supposed to be really strong? Usopp asked. He just looks stupid to me. Oi, don't underestimate him, Usopp. Luffy told him, looks aren't everything. He looked at the priest for a moment. Though I admit he really looks stupid and fat. Luffy admitted after a few minutes. Hey, do you have chest hair? And do you like pies by any chance? What does that have to do with anything? Both Usopp and Sanji yelled at once. Hey, answer me, Luffy yelled. The priest stopped jumping for a moment. I do like pies, he replied. They're good, ho, hoo. Bastard, I'll kick your ass, Luffy yelled at the enemy. Both of his crew members fell down anime style. Hey, round guy, Sanji yelled after a few moments. Nami-san and the others better be okay. Oh, the sacrifices? The man asked. No idea, ho, hoo, but if they stay where they are, they'll die. If they move they'll also die, ho, hoo. Why you shitty bastard? Sanji cursed. You should be more worried about yourselves, the priest continued. To be blunt, you'll have to defeat me before you can move ahead. He jumped down towards their little boat. Here he comes, Usopp yelled. Kick his ass, Luffy. Luffy, however, had a different idea. He plopped down on the ground. Oh, no, Usopp repeated with horror in his eyes. No, come on, don't do this, Luffy. Sorry, Usopp. Luffy apologized, sincerely this time, but you need the training. The priest was fast approaching. Yash, Usopp. Sanji announced. We'll have to take care of this. Sanji knew that if Luffy bothered to apologize, this opponent had to be at least reasonably strong. He leapt in the air and prepared a kick. Collier, Sanji announced. An upper kick using the right foot. The priest announced. He moved his body back to dodge the kick and moved his right palm right into Sanji's face. Impact. He announced, and the dial, hidden in his glove, activated. To Usopp's horror, Sanji was blown away into a big tree. Sanji, he yelled, you can't be seriously hurt from a weak punch like that. Oh, but it's not a punch, the priest announced. It's a little different from that. Who are you anyway? Luffy asked. Usopp turned around with a disbelieving face. Hey, Luffy, he yelled. Be a little more worried about Sanji. Sanji's strong. He's fine. Luffy told him. True to his word, Sanji stood up, muttering curses. So you're a priest? Sanji asked from beneath a tree. That's right, the round man replied. My name is Satori. I'm one of the priests who serve our almighty god, Enel. I control the Verth of the Lost Forest. Lost Forest? Luffy repeated. The man looked at him arrogantly. Yes, he answered. That's the name of this forest. Ho, ho, who? Why is it called Lost, though? Usopp asked. The priest looked at him with an unsettling grin. Well, Satori began and raised his hand. Impact. Usopp was sent flying. The priest then turned his attention to Luffy, who continued to sit. Ho, ho, who, and now for you, he said and put his right palm right into Luffy's face. Aren't you going to resist? Did anyone ever tell you to restrain yourself when eating? Luffy asked casually. There was silence for a few moments. You're the last person who can say that. Luffy, Sanji yelled from beneath, though in earnest he barely fought off a smirk from Luffy's blunt but somewhat hypocritical remark. Oh, why is that? Luffy asked in confusion. Stop insulting me, Satori shouted. Impact. Luffy however jumped in the air, dodging the burst of the impact dial. Armament. Luffy murmured and his right arm blackened. He landed on the back of the boat. He's fast, Satori thought. I barely followed his movement. I'll ignore you if I want to, Ballery, Luffy said with a smirk. The priest's face twitched. That was completely wrong, he yelled. It's Satori. Whatever. Luffy mumbled and waved his left arm in dismissal. Why is his right hand black? The priest thought. The Straw Hat Pirate then pulled his right arm back. He's going to stretch. The priest thought. Gomu Gomu no pistol. Luffy announced and punched forward. The arm stretched forward, barely missing the priest by a millimeter. The fist hit one of the huge trees of the Lost Forest in its huge trunk. Luffy pulled his arm back and it quickly snapped back into original position. There was silence for a few moments and then to everyone's horror, the tree trunk cracked and the huge treetop fell down on the ground. All that from just one punch? The round priest thought in panic and horror. Gomu Gomu no. Luffy announced. The priest turned his head. Luffy used his Soru and was already near him, ready to whip him away. He moved his right hand in Luffy's face. Impact. He announced, but to his surprise, Luffy wasn't blown away, only his head was. It snapped right back into position. Muchi. Luffy completed his attack name and Satori was sent flying into a tree. He didn't use any haki however. Sanji used this opportunity to act and he jumped into the air. He landed a kick straight in the enemy's enormous stomach. Satori spat out a bit of blood as he landed on the ground. Sanji attacked once again, but the priest quickly got up, avoiding the kick that was aimed for his head. Impact. He yelled and put his hand in Sanji's face, but at that moment, Usopp shot a gunpowder star straight at him, forcing him to move to avoid it. In doing so, he had to retract his hand, which meant the blast was wasted on thin air. Sanji smiled and prepared to kick again. Usopp prepared himself for battle as well. Luffy observed as Sanji's kick missed the priest by a millimeter and he got hit with a simple gunpowder star. His observation haki is decent and he's quite tough, but he's not really skilled. Luffy thought as Sanji's kick brushed the priest's side, causing him pain. His only way of attacking are his dials. He's forgotten about his surprise balls. He's barely concentrated enough to use his mantra now that he knows how strong I am. Impact. The priest yelled. Sanji was sent flying into the ground. Satori jumped at him, attempting to use his dial to finish him off, but he had to avoid gunpowder stars, rubber bands and various random objects from hitting him, so he didn't really have time to use his dial on Sanji. Irritated, Satori ran towards Usopp, while dodging his attacks and getting hit by some. He's going to get to him, Luffy thought and unsheathed his sword. Just as he was about to slash, Sanji quickly got up and with a kick aimed for the priest's head, sent his foe flying away from Usopp. Luffy smiled proudly. The priest jumped back up. His yellow glasses were now broken and his hat had long since fallen off. He looked really nervous. He ran towards his foes. Sanji attempted a kick on his foe, but the priest barely dodged it. After that, however, he jumped towards Sanji, using his sheer weight to both damage and restrain the cook. As the cook lay on the ground, bloodied and restrained, attempting to get out of his opponent's grip, the priest moved his palm towards Sanji's face. A Kainami, red wave, Luffy announced and slashed from the right to the left with a Shiden no Kaneshimi, sending a compressed air cut towards him. The priest pushed his head down to dodge the blast, but Sanji headbutted him, sending his head back up. The air blast didn't seriously damage the priest, but it did cut most of his hair on top of his head. "Don't forget that I'm still here, round guy," Luffy announced from the boat on top of the Milky Road. "Be a good training dummy." Sanji looked at Satori, who was still on top of him, and looked in Luffy's direction in what seemed like a completely panicked expression. Most of the hair no top of his hair was completely gone. The sight would have been comical for the cook, had he not been rempacted a while ago by that same man. "Training?" Satori thought as he gritted his teeth in panic. "Is that all I am to him?" He released his previously iron grip from Sanji, and upon feeling that, Sanji managed to free his right leg. He kicked the priest from the side and he went flying a short distance. Immediately upon stopping, he received a gunpowder star in his face. Finally he collapsed on the ground. Usopp sighed in relief, lowered his weapon and sat on the ground. Sanji picked himself up and stood up. "Damn fat bastard," he muttered. "If he didn't have that mantra thing, this wouldn't have been nearly as hard." "Hey guys," Luffy yelled. They both looked up to him. He stretched both of his hands, grabbing each of them. He pulled them up, ignoring their panicked yelling. They prepared to hit the boat hard or even to fall off it upon arriving back, but none of that happened. Instead, Luffy slowed his stretching after they were close and then gently put them on the boat. They stared at him for a moment in surprise, but then just decided to just be thankful for the gentler than normal treatment. "Thanks, Luffy," Sanji begun, but Luffy cut him off with his hand. "I shouldn't have even forced you to fight him," Luffy said, obviously sorry. He looked on the ground. "He could have killed you." To his surprise, Sanji laughed. He lightly punched Luffy in the shoulder. Luffy looked up. "Don't be stupid, Captain," he told him. "I know how strong you are. I'll never be able to match up to you, if you shelter me too much." Luffy smiled. "That must have been the impact dial," he told them. Sanji nodded. "That bastard would be nothing without those dials or observation haki," he told the captain. "I'm kinda ashamed of getting hurt this badly." Luffy nodded. He even dodged sloppily, he added, and kept losing control of his mantra. "You obviously scared him too much with that punch, Luffy," Usopp told him. Luffy scratched his head in embarrassment and laughed. She, I guess I did," he replied. "I guess you don't exactly see that every day." "Though did you really have to completely destroy that tree?" Sanji asked in a deadpanned expression. Luffy pouted. "I might have overdone it," he replied. Both of his crew members sighed. "Hey, let's eat, guys," he told them. "Sure, the priest is down, so we might as well do that," Sanji replied. "But let's get this boat moving again first." Then he remembered something. "Luffy," he called. Said captain turned his head and quirked an eyebrow. "Something strange happened when the priest had me pinned down." "What?" Luffy asked. "It's as if I saw into the future," the cook explained. Luffy's eyes widened in realization. "I saw the guy pound my head into the ground with that shitty dial." Luffy gained an enormous grin. "That's observation haki, Sanji," he told him with an excited tone. "It seems it's activated itself. 43. Accident prone." The god's priest Shiro looked arrogantly down on his foes. The Knight of the Sky, Gonfal and his partner, Pierre, were entangled in his invisible strings, and the little chopper, who wasn't a challenge at all, looked in panic at both the knight and the priest. The ship, where he stood, was heavily damaged, and the mast along with the sail was floating on the water underneath the sacrificial platform. He thought it was a job well done. He just had to finish off the 3 intruders and be done with it. He thought he had nothing to worry about and expected to soon go to the place where the remaining priests were called to defend against the Shandian attack. And then, the next moment, everything changed. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" an enraged voice yelled. The priest turned around on his giant bird and saw a man with a straw hat, who stood on a large tree branch. His eyes were hidden under his hat, but his voice betrayed his anger. Steam surrounded his slightly pinkish body. "I didn't sense him coming," Shira thought. "What is this guy?" "Luffy," Chopper yelled with tears in his eyes. "This guy, he hurt Mary. I couldn't protect it." "It's okay, Chopper," Luffy replied. "You did what you could. At least you're okay." Chopper nodded tearfully. "And the knight came to help you, right?" he asked. Chopper nodded. Luffy turned to Gonfal. "Thanks for helping, Chopper," he said. The knight shook his head. "I only did what I promised I would do if you called me," he replied. "And I'm afraid if you hadn't arrived, it'd be for nothing. You see, me and Pierre can't move anymore." Luffy's face changed to one of confusion, and after that realization, "Strain," he muttered. He unsheathed his sword and, in an action barely seen by those observing, released a compressed air blast, which cut the tiny strings which held Gonfal and his partner in place. The blast then continued towards the tress and cut a tree in half and then dispersed. The priest watched in horror as the giant treetop slid slightly off the tree trunk. Gonfal and Pierre flew and landed on the Going Merry, next to Chopper. The priest and his bird flew and landed on the stairs beneath it. "So, you're one of the priests?" Luffy asked after a moment of silence. The priest smirked. "That's right. My name is Shira. I'm the priest of the Ordeal of Strain," he answered. "I don't give a crap about your stupid name, stupid jerk," Luffy answered. The priest lost his smirk and scowled. Shira and his bird took off and flew towards him, lance at the ready. As the priest flew towards him, Luffy dodged the lance. "Armament," he muttered and infused his right fist with haki. It became shiny black, but after a moment, the air around the fist ignited as Luffy was still under the effect of Gear Second. The man and the bird flew past him and turned around. He noticed the flaming fist and stared at it in confusion. He flew towards Luffy again, but this time, when his lance was dodged once again, a fiery fist collided with his face. He was sent flying through several trees before he finally stopped in one. The bird, Fuza, looked around furiously and, being unable to locate him, started flying around in panic, searching for him. "Wow, so cool," Chopper yelled from ship. Luffy turned around and laughed sheepishly, while scratching his head. Of course, he forgot all about his fiery hand. "Luffy, your hair is on fire," Chopper yelled in terror. "Oh, crap." Luffy yelled and deactivated both his haki armament and his Gear Second. He started turning around in place, while trying to put his fire out with his hands. All 3 observers' sweat dropped. "Is this how it usually is on your ship?" Gonfal asked. "Yes," Chopper answered. Pierre shook his head. After a few moments of running around in a circle, Luffy accidentally fell off the branch that he was standing on and fell down into the lake or whatever it was. Several sky sharks opened their mouths in order to eat him. "Crap!" Luffy yelled. Chopper gritted his teeth in panic, while Gonfal mounted Pierre and they flew towards him in an attempt to intercept him. At that moment, Luffy did the only thing he possibly could. He started kicking. "What?" Chopper and Gonfal shouted in unison. Luffy opened his eyes and looked at their dropped jaws and astonished-looking faces. He blinked a few times in confusion and then looked on the ground, and there wasn't any. Finally, his jaw also dropped. "I'm standing on air," he yelled excited. "Su-cool." He then tried to take a step forward. Unfortunately, he had no idea how the entire thing worked, so he used a lot more force than necessary. Accidentally, he activated his Gear Second. Luffy only had time to think, before he was blasted high in the sky. "Dom iit," he yelled as he disappeared from view. After a few moments, the Knight of the Sky landed back on the ship. This is crazy, he said. I can't believe what I'm seeing anymore. Chopper nodded. I know what you mean, he replied. Hey, are you a talking reindeer? Gonfall asked after a few moments. You just noticed, quite a bit away from the sacrificial platform. Robin, Zoro and Nami had just found something interesting. Before them was the other half of Mont Blanc Cricket's house back on Jaya. Ah, what's that? Nami asked. Robin gained a thoughtful expression. That could be the sound of someone getting his skin separated from his body, Navigator-san. She replied calmly. Nami and Zoro cringe. Stop saying such scary things, Robin, Nami yelled at her. Robin just giggled. Ah, it's getting nearer, Zoro commented. Maybe someone, Robin started. Don't say anything, Nami yelled with razor-sharp teeth. Robin just laughed again. Ah, move it, guys, that sounded like Luffy, Zoro suggested. And then something crashed into them. Zoro and Nami coughed because of the dust, and after the dust settled, a very interesting sight greeted them. Hey guys. Luffy greeted as he lifted his head. Am I disturbing something? I feel like I'm the one disturbing something, Nami muttered with a sigh. Luffy, you might want to, Zoro suggested. Get off her? Luffy finally opened his eyes. He laid on top of Robin. His head was on her bosom. He looked down and saw her staring at him. Hi, Robin, he muttered, didn't see you there. She continued to stare. This is like, super awkward, isn't it? He asked. She nodded slowly. He stood up and helped her up as well. At least you were comfy. Luffy muttered under his breath. Her eyes widened. Excuse me? She asked. Ah, never mind, he replied and waved his hand as if hitting a fly. He inwardly face-palmed. Why did I have to say that aloud? Anyway, look at this, Luffy, Zoro called, trying to diffuse the awkwardness. He pointed to the half of the house. Cool, he yelled. So then, this upper yard island was like blasted into the sky by a knock-up stream or something? Everyone quieted down and stared at him in astonishment. Yes, actually, Robin said after a moment. What you said was our conclusion as well. This seems to be the other half of Cricket-san's house. I think we should head back to the ship now, Zoro suggested. By the way, why are you here, Luffy? Luffy sighed. Well, I sensed Chopper was in danger, so I quickly went after him, he answered. Flashback. After dealing with the Round Priest, the three pirates continued on the Milky Road. After a while, Luffy sensed a powerful presence near Chopper. He also sensed fear. He jumped off the boat on the grass field filled with heads on spikes. Hey, what are you doing, Luffy? Usopp asked. Sanji also looked in his direction. Continue this way, he replied. I'm going ahead. But why? Sanji asked. Chopper's in trouble, Luffy explained. He dropped into his usual stance. Gear second, he announced. He used his legs as pumps for blood. Steam surrounded him. What's that? Usopp asked. Why is there steam around you? Luffy answered and dashed ahead. When he was halfway there, Luffy was startled by something he did not expect. A voice. A childish-sounding voice. Captain, my captain, what's that? He thought. After a while, he dismissed it in favor of continuing on his way. Gear second, what's that? Nami asked. Luffy looked at her. It's a technique that makes me faster basically, he answered, then he sighed. Anyway, when I reached the ship, the mast was gone and the ship looked even worse off than before. He continued. The ship was attacked by one of the priests. Shira or something, so I beat him up. And what was that voice you heard, Captain San? Robin asked. Luffy shook his head. Don't know, he replied. Oh, the weird knight was also there. He came to help Chopper, but he was in trouble when I reached him. So he held his part of the deal, Zoro replied. Luffy nodded. If it weren't for him, Chopper might have died, and the ship could have burned completely, he answered. Why did you come crashing down from the sky though? Nami asked. Luffy laughed. She. It's kind of funny, really, he answered. Funny? All three of them asked. She. Well you see, if I combine Gear second and Haki armament, I burst into flames. Luffy started. Their eyes widened. That's kinda cool, Zoro commented with a smirk. I wish I could make my swords catch fire. A sword is cooler when on fire. She. Right, Luffy agreed, while Nami face palmed. Anyway, then I accidentally scratched my hair with my hand still on fire. All three of them looked at him in shock. You're kidding, right? Nami asked. Luffy shook his head. Zoro face palmed while Robin laughed. Okay, then I tried to put the fire out and I accidentally fell from the branch. I kind of panicked there, so I did the only thing I thought of. Luffy continued. Zoro nodded. You mean, you stretched and grabbed a branch or something? He asked. Luffy's eyes widened. Don't tell me, Zoro thought. Luffy punched his fist into his palm. Right. I could have done that. Nami and Zoro both fell down. Robin just stared at him in bewilderment. You forgot about stretching? She asked. Luffy put his hands behind his head and laughed sheepishly. She. Anyway, I started kicking and next thing I know I was standing on air, Luffy replied and grinned. Huh? Yeah, cool I know, she. Luffy continued. But I didn't know how to use it well, so I kinda overdid it, and then I crashed into Robin. So, this standing on air thing, Zoro started. Can you do it now? Luffy shrugged. I could try, he replied. It's called Geppo, moonwalk, by the way, or so I hear. Wait, you can actually walk on air? Nami interrupted with a shocked expression. There's a technique like that? Luffy nodded. Sure. But only high-ranking marines and agents can do it. It's kinda hard for a normal guy to do it, he replied. There was silence for a moment. Oh, by the way, Sanji unlocked his observation haki, Luffy announced and grinned. Seriously? Nami asked. Luffy nodded joyfully. Damn shitty cook. Zoro muttered. Luffy laughed. Oh, Zoro, you're jealous? He asked. The first mate's face reddened. I'm not jealous, he yelled with razor-sharp teeth. He stomped angrily towards the forest. We need to get to the ship fast so I can continue my training? Shishi. Observation training by any chance? Luffy asked and grinned. Shut up, he yelled. Zoro, that's the wrong direction, Nami announced. He started walking in a different direction. Swordsman-san, that's also the wrong direction, Robin said in an amused tone. Luffy then randomly started laughing. What is it, Captain San? Robin asked. He looked at her. Zoro suddenly got a very bad feeling in his gut. She. You know, maybe we should just leave navigation to Zoro. Luffy started. Everyone looked at him with confusion. Maybe then we'll find One Piece by accident. 44. Uneasy answers. It was a cold night. The party was already over. They stayed and slept in the forest across the lake, not too far away from the sacrificial platform on top of which the ship of the Straw Hat Pirates was situated. It wasn't clear who had intruded upon whom, whether the animals or the pirates were intruders, but after a short confrontation, both of them settled around the campfire, which was by now almost burnt out. In the middle of his nightmare-plagued sleep, Luffy woke up. He sat up as he was no longer capable of sleep given what he dreamt about. Captain, my captain, the voice that Luffy had nearly forgotten called again. What's that? He thought as he scratched his head. He yawned. I'm not going to get any sleep anytime soon and it's probably not even close to morning yet. Captain, come to me, my captain, the voice called to him. He shrugged and got up. Hey, Luffy, someone else, someone he knew, called to him. He turned around and saw a panic-looking Usopp. He yawned again. What is it, Usopp? He asked. Did you hear someone speaking? The sniper looked at him oddly. What are you talking about? He asked in confusion. Luffy's eyes widened. I heard someone calling me. Luffy answered honestly, third time now. Usopp shook his head. I haven't heard anything, he replied. But anyway, Luffy, it's kinda embarrassing, but... What is it, Usopp? He interrupted. Seekaju, he started, but hesitated, earning an embarrassed blush. I need to take a leak. Luffy looked at him with a confused expression. Just go alone. Another voice interrupted with a yawn. You're not a kid anymore. Hey, I'm not scared at getting deeper in the scary forest, at night. Usopp stuttered, obviously not hiding his fear well. Luffy's look softened. So you want me to come with you? He asked. Usopp nodded. He sighed. Fine. He answered. But let me warn you that I'm hearing voices. Zoro snickered. What if one of those voices ordered Luffy to kill you? Zoro asked in a creepy tone as he turned around, bearing a maniacal grin. Luffy chuckled upon seeing Usopp cringe and pale. The sniper however interpreted Luffy's amusement as something else and flinched slightly as Luffy got near him. "Oh, relax, Usopp," Luffy told him. "I'm not going to listen to what some stupid voice is telling me." Usopp relaxed slightly, but flinched again as he looked back at Zoro, who still bore an unsettling grin. "And you?" he said to Zoro. "Stop looking at Usopp like that. Your face is way too scary." "Oi!" Zoro whispered loudly as his grin turned into a scowl and he glared at Luffy. After a moment, he humphed and turned back to the small campfire. Usopp and Luffy made their way deeper into the forest. When Usopp thought he heard something, he flinched. "What's wrong, Usopp?" Luffy asked. Usopp shook his head. "Thought I heard something," he replied. Luffy nodded. He guessed it wasn't that odd to be scared in a place like this. Luffy wasn't scared right now, but from his childhood experiences with the wild, he could definitely understand why his friend was so unnerved. After all, Usopp wasn't as strong as his monstrous crew members and this was no ordinary forest either. They kept walking. To his relief, Usopp found his presence comforting and wasn't flinching anymore, even though the forest, as any other, kept producing noises of its own. "Captain, my captain," the voice announced again. He stopped. "Didn't you hear that?" he asked his friend. "Hear what?" Usopp asked back. Luffy shook his head and continued to walk, but then Usopp stopped him. He looked confused at Usopp, but in a second, he understood everything. It was the sound of a hammer. It sounded like someone pounded on something with his hammer. "I hear it," he confirmed. "That sounds like," Usopp whispered. "I know." Luffy interrupted. He sighed. "Listen, just take a piss now and we'll check that out after that." Usopp nodded. Stay here," he ordered with a stuttering voice. Luffy simply nodded. He turned around and looked over the trees. "Captain, come here, Captain. I'm waiting for you," the voice asked again. The hammering continued. Could it be, Luffy thought, but shook his head after a while. It sounds different. It's not the same. Similar, but not the same. Usopp finished after a moment. "I heard it again," Luffy announced. Usopp looked at him. How does it sound like?" he asked as they continued towards the sounds. "The voice?" Luffy asked. Usopp nodded. "It sounds like the voice of a child," he answered. Usopp paled at this. "Why you're not making that up, are you?" he stuttered. This sounds like something from a horror story." Luffy laughed. Hey, don't laugh at me," he whispered loudly. "It keeps calling me Captain," Luffy told him. Usopp quirked a curious eyebrow, and inviting me to come closer. Usopp looked down on the ground. Luffy could see that Usopp was frightened. "Don't worry," he said with a smile. "Nothing bad will happen." But, Luffy," Usopp protested. This sounds like something straight from a horror story." Luffy snickered. "Hey, Usopp," he replied cheerfully. "What do you think it is? A dead little girl that's come to kill us?" Usopp paled even more, color leaving his face completely. Don't say that," he protested. Luffy looked at him with a quirked eyebrow. "So I was right?" he asked with a smirk, but then he looked at Usopp with a more serious expression. "Look, not many things can harm a pirate crew as strong as ours," Luffy continued. "And I'm pretty sure we could take on a little girl any day." There was silence for a few moments. The hammering grew louder, as did the voice. "Captain," after a moment they found the ship. They were very near as the hammer was loud. It was coming from the ship. They looked at the ship and could not believe what they saw. Ghost!" Usopp yelled and pointed at the small figure, which did look like a ghost. Even Luffy was unnerved by this. His friend hid behind him. The ghost-like figure turned around and showed its unclear white face. The only thing visible were the big eyes and the wide grin, very similar to his own. "Mary?" he asked himself. "Could that be Mary?" Luffy. It's a ghost." Usopp stuttered. "I'm gonna talk to it," Luffy announced. Usopp paled. But, Luffy, he looks friendly," Luffy replied. Then he turned his head to Usopp, who was still behind him. "Look, if you're scared then go back to Zoro." But, I'll be okay," Luffy interrupted and smiled. Usopp slowly let go of him and turned around, then he ran back to the encampment. As soon as he saw Usopp leave, Luffy flung himself onto the ship. The small ghost figure turned around. Luffy was surprised to see that the figure looked no different up close as it did from afar. It was a man made of blinding white light. Luffy could only discern the most basic humanoid features. "Captain!" The little man yelled in a childish voice and attempted to hug him, but his hands passed through Luffy. His grin faded in obvious disappointment at being unable to touch him. "Are you?" Luffy started. "I'm Mary," the ghost chirped out in a cheerful voice, regaining his smile. "But how can I hear your voice? How can I talk to you?" he asked. "Captain, you have the ability to hear the voice of things," the little man explained. He dropped the hammer on the ground. "Mary's voice sounds different," Luffy thought. "I am different," the man replied. Luffy stared at him wide-eyed. "What's wrong, my captain?" the ghost asked. "I just answered to you." But I didn't say anything," Luffy answered. The ghost tilted his head. "Yes you did," he answered. "But I didn't say anything. I only thought about it," Luffy yelled in disbelief. The ghost scratched his head with his hand. "Said, thought?" he asked. "What's the difference?" Luffy could only stare dumbly at the figure. After a moment, he recomposed himself. "You said you were different?" Luffy asked. "Differ previous life of course, Captain," the ghost announced in a cheerful voice like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Luffy's eyes went wide. How do you know about that?" he asked. "You're my captain," the ghost announced. "I know my captain." But how can you know these things?" Luffy nearly shouted. The little man scratched his head again. "Don't know," he announced after a minute. "I just know all my captain knows and what my friends know." Luffy's eyes widened again. "You know everything?" he asked with a disbelieving expression. "You know about Ace and the crew and everything that's happened?" "Yes," the ghost yelled. Luffy just stared at him. "But how?" he asked. "Don't know," the ghost interrupted. "Why are you different?" thought he asked after a moment. "You're less childish," the little man offered. Luffy shrugged, but then nodded. "My captain is different, so I'm different," the ghost replied cheerfully. Luffy just blinked a few times. Then he suddenly realized something. If he could talk to Mary, then that meant, "I'm dying," the little ghost answered to his thoughts. Luffy was again startled, both by the bluntness and the revelation itself. "But how?" he asked with wide eyes. "I made sure to take care of half of the iron spears and I beat up Bellamy before he could do anything." "I'm dying," the little man repeated. "I wish I could go on adventures with you forever, but I can't." Luffy looked down. "I failed again. I thought I could prevent all my mistakes, but this is not something you could have prevented, Captain," the childish voice interrupted. Luffy looked up and a tear dropped down his cheek. "But if I was stronger, No, the ghost interrupted. "You couldn't have. It was meant this way." There was silence for a few moments. "You can't control everything, my captain," the ghost told him, "and you shouldn't try." "I'm sorry, Mary," he whispered. "You always knew this was going to happen," the ghost told him. "I could never reach the new world, let alone survive in it." Silence lingered for a few more moments. "How'd I tell them?" he asked and looked down. "Just say the truth." In the morning, everyone was startled to find Luffy staring at a random direction. When he turned to them, everyone could see he had bloodshot eyes. When asked about it, he confirmed what Usopp had said about the ghost, but refused to say what happened afterward. He didn't think it was wise for him to break the news about the ship in his current state. Speaking about the ship, the ghost had repaired it. Like last time. This was another startling, but not unwelcome discovery for the crew. To their relief, the crew found that Luffy wasn't aggressive or very irritable, like he usually was when he got no sleep. He was just gloomy. Sad. After an uncharacteristically quiet breakfast, the crew divided into two groups. The group that would take care of the ship, which included Usopp, Sanji and Nami, and the group that would look for gold, which was composed of Luffy, Zoro, Robin and Chopper. After a few basic instructions, Luffy felt that it was his job to add a few things. "Hey guys," he announced. "Listen up." Everyone looked at him. "If you meet this guy," Luffy began, "don't attack him, even if he provokes you." Everyone looked at him in confusion. He's bound to be very powerful, so, leave him to me," he concluded. Then he looked at Sanji. "Sanji, I'm counting on you to protect Nami and Usopp," he told him. Sanji nodded. "I'll make sure Nami Swan doesn't get hurt," he announced while doing his noodle dance. "And Usopp?" Luffy added. "Whatever," Sanji replied. Luffy smirked. He knew that although Sanji was very rough and dismissive of his male crew members, he would still do whatever he could to help them. Plus, he seemed very protective of the long-nosed sniper. After going deeper into the forest and barely escaping the gigantic python, which he didn't really want to fight, since he later learned that he was not such a bad guy, a snake, that he appeared to be, Luffy found himself alongside Robin as she searched for the ruins of the City of Gold, which was supposed to be somewhere on the upper yard. It was really the only place he could think of being. He knew that if went with either Chopper or Zoro, he'd likely be overprotective of them. He knew they had gotten very messed up by their respective opponents, and that would have prevented them from improving as much as they could. Still, however far away he was, he'd run to them if he thought they were in too much danger. Observation haki and future knowledge were both a blessing and curse. He knew what was going to happen. He knew they were going to be fine, but still, after seeing them all dead once, he couldn't help but be worried about them. He convinced himself to trust in their strength. They handled this before, they can do it again. Robin was searching for the ruins, but it was obvious that she wasn't that much into it at that very moment. He knew she had something to say, and he knew he wouldn't like it, and he was right. "Captain San?" she asked, but didn't turn around. "What is it, Robin?" he asked. "I know you're hiding something," she answered. His eyes widened. "Oh, crap," he thought. "You're impossibly powerful, Captain San. And you know things you couldn't possibly know," she continued. They stopped. After a moment she turned around and looked at him. He tilted his head on the side and looked at her with an expression as confused as he could muster. "What do you mean?" he asked her. She shook her head. "Don't try to fool me," she told him. "I'm not an idiot, Captain San." "I never said you were," he told her. "You look like you're 16, she started, "and yet you often act as the oldest of us." "I'm 17, he corrected her. "Not the point," she told him. "You're 17 and yet you can fight with Dracul Mahawk on equal terms. You seem to know a lot about everywhere you go and yet you don't look like the learning type. You have nightmares about everyone dying on a regular basis." He looked at her. "So I'm hiding something?" he asked her. She nodded. He smirked. "From the moment I got you on crew, Robin, I knew you would be the hardest to keep things from," he told her. Her eyes widened. "Then what?" she started. "But I can't tell you anything about it," he interrupted. "Not yet." She looked at him with a small smirk. "That makes me even more interested in your past, Captain San," she asked him. He sighed. He looked her in the eyes and she flinched. Flashback. She laid on the ground. She was still alive, but it was obvious she didn't have much longer. She laid in her own blood. Her arms were burned. She obviously tried to use them to at least somewhat restrain the murderous admiral. "Luffy," she whispered, unable to raise her voice. "Robin," he answered with tears in his eyes. "There's still time, I can." "No," she interrupted. "I'm sorry. I won't be alive much longer." He stayed silent, respecting her unspoken wish. "Thank you, Luffy," she told him. "Thank you for saving me when I wanted to die." She smiled. "It was the best thing that anyone had ever done for me." A tear slipped from his eye. She noticed that and her expression softened. "What happened to you?" she asked. "Death," he answered and looked away. "That's what happened, everyone died." They continued their search in silence. 45. The all-powerful god appears. Whilst the pirates continued to search for the City of Gold, a battle between the god's enforcers and Shandians took place. The little war was nothing at all against what was to come, but both sides were hostile to the pirates and their ranks consisted of enough people who could challenge them on at least somewhat equal terms. God Enel was zipping around, taking out people that he was interested in taking out, encountering no real opposition to his overwhelmingly powerful logia devil fruit. Although he had lost 2 and not just one of his priests the previous day, he was unconcerned, treating everything as the perfect game to ease his boredom. Luffy continued following Robin, although he personally wasn't very interested in the ruins. They found some ruins and God's enforcers that dared to even touch them in a not enough careful manner, were dealt with swiftly and painfully by disembodied arms. "You know, I don't know why you keep following me if you're upset with me, Captain San," Robin asked after they reached yet another small ruin of history. "I'm not upset, Robin," he answered. She turned around and looked at him. "You certainly seem that way," she told him. He shook his head. "I'm just thinking about something," he told her. "Your past?" she asked. "I'm sorry if I brought out some painful memories." "Nah," he answered. "I always think about that anyway." She quirked an eyebrow, but they were interrupted from any further conversation by footsteps approaching them. My, what a lovely young lady," a voice announced. Both of them turned around. Behind them stood a mountain of a man. He had long black hair as well as several chins, which Luffy immediately noticed. "Are you another one of God's servants?" she asked. He seemed offended by this as he took a threatening step forward. "Shut that insolent mouth of yours," he threatened in a reprimanding tone. "I'm the chief enforcer in the service of God Enel. My name is Yama." "And what do you want here, Chief Enforcer San?" she asked in a non-offensive tone. "You'll see soon enough," he yelled out with an evil smirk. "Me." Luffy's sweat dropped, while Robin just stared at him. Several birds flew away from the nearby trees. Seriously, Luffy thought, but then he smirked. "So, will you tell us what you want, Mountain Stomach?" Luffy chirped out in a cheerful voice. Robin looked at him in bewilderment. "Has anyone ever told you that you are way too blunt?" she asked. Luffy just grinned. "Oh, yes," he answered. "Plenty of times." She just shook her head with a slight smile. The head enforcer was less than pleased, however. "You'll pay for those insolent words, boy," he yelled and jumped in the air. He was surprisingly fast and agile for such an obese man. "Drop Mountain," the obese man announced, and as the name of the technique suggested, dropped straight at Luffy. The Straw Hat Pirate quickly took a thumb of his right hand in his mouth and bit it. "Gear third," he announced and blew air into his hand and it inflated in size. After enlarging it, Luffy simply grabbed the fast-approaching mountain man and restrained him with it. "Hey!" Yama yelled from the fist, squirming in his grip. "Let me go." Luffy turned to his companion. "I figured you wouldn't be too happy if he destroyed the ruins," he told her. "Where should I put him down?" Robin blinked a few times and then pointed into the distance away from the ruins. They made their way in that direction. After they left the ruins, Luffy turned to Robin. "What should I do with him?" he asked her. Both of them looked at the squirming Yama in his hand. "I wonder how long it would take to clean the blood off your hand if you squeezed him to death?" she asked in a totally emotionless tone. His eyes bulged out. "Seriously, Robin?" Luffy yelled at her. "That's just yucky." She just chuckled at his expression. Luffy pouted and set the obese man down on the ground. Yama panted for a minute and then looked angrily at Luffy, who was undisturbed by his glare. "Now apologize to Robin for trying to hump her ruins," Luffy ordered in a childish voice. Robin laughed behind him. The chief enforcer fumed angrily in front of him. "Drop Mountain," he yelled and jumped in the air, attempting to drop straight on Luffy. The pirate moved out of the way, however, and when he jumped the third time, arms sprouted from the nearby tree and grabbed him. After that, the combined power of many arms slammed the man into the tree trunk in front of him and he slid down on the ground. After a few minutes of bone-breaking, slamming and dropping, the chief enforcer was dealt with. Luffy didn't interfere, although he thought that if he did, it'd be way less painful for the obese man. "Ah, it's so good to be rubber." Robin and Luffy then found a big ruined building, with stairs leading to the top. Robin seemed very excited upon finding it and ran ahead, while Luffy followed behind her. She cleared the island cloud which prevented passage to the lower levels. When they reached the lower levels and exited them, they realized they had reached Shandora, the city of gold, except there was no gold anywhere in sight. Meanwhile, Chopper had defeated the priest named Gedatsu and climbed the giant beanstalk also known as Giant Jack. Upon arriving there, however, he was quickly disposed of by the remaining priest, Ohm. After a while, Zoro, Wiper, Gonfall as well as numerous foot soldiers from both of the warring sides also arrived on the scene and a three-way battle between Zoro, Wiper and Ohm commenced. Wiper as well as Ohm were hostile to everyone present except their own soldiers. Zoro focused on Ohm, but was forced to fight Wiper as well. while Gonfald tried to fight Ohm until he was swallowed by another newcomer on the scene. The giant snake Nola. Not that anyone actually knew her name. After a hard and destructive battle, Zoro had defeated Ohm. Wiper prepared to fight him, while Nola kept harassing all of them, being no doubt the most powerful being on that battlefield. As Robin and Luffy explored the ruins, the crackling of electricity interrupted them. Luffy immediately noticed the new presence. The self-proclaimed god Enel sat on a nearby ruin. He was luxuriously dressed with bits of golden jewelry decorating his body. Luffy was intrigued by the drums attached to his back as well as his horrifically long earlobes. He smirked and took a bite of his apple. This finally snapped Robin out of her thoughts. "Yahahaha, magnificent, isn't it?" he announced in his arrogant voice. Even after being shot into the sky, the great ancient city still exists in all its grandeur. Shandora. But even a city of legend cannot display its splendor when it's obstructed by clouds. He took another bite. "I discovered it. My idiotic predecessors never even found it," he continued. Robin now turned around to face him. "And you are?" she asked. "I think that's pretty clear, Robin." Luffy told her quietly. The man on the ruin smirked. "I am God," he replied simply. He took another large bite from the apple. "Both of you have impressed me." He looked at Robin. "You have managed to find the city so incredibly quickly," he told her. "A task that took us many months to complete. I see that they are simple to find if you can just read the inscriptions." Then he looked at Luffy. "And you," he told him. "You managed to defeat one of the powerful priests with just one punch. Of course that means nothing against the power of God, but I commend you on your strength regardless. What I don't understand is why you came with her instead of helping your Nakama fight." Luffy smirked. "It's simple, really," he answered. "If I protect them too much, they'll stay in my shadow. They must fight their own battles so that they'll become as strong as me someday." An impressive answer. Enel commended. "So this is mere training for your lackeys?" Luffy nodded. "Essentially yes, except they're not lackeys," he replied. "Whatever you think of them, you needn't have bothered coming here. The gold yogurt here. You're a few years too late for that," Enel told him. "Gold?" Robin interjected. "Now that you mention it, there isn't any, so it was you who took it?" "Yahahaha. That's how it should be, isn't it?" he asked them as he ate the rest of the apple. After all, whom better befits such an illustrious metal than God himself? Luffy scowled. "This guy is getting on my nerves," he thought. "God this, God that, oh, I'm so goddamn godly." "Then may I assume you also took the golden bell?" Robin inquired after a few moments. This surprised the man slightly. Golden bell?" he asked her. He doesn't know about it, she thought. "This is very interesting," he continued. "What did you learn by reading those glyphs?" "No, unfortunately, if it wasn't here when you arrived, then it never made it to the sky," Robin answered. "It's here," Luffy interrupted. Both of them looked at him. "It must be here. If it wasn't, Cricket-Asen would probably have found it." "Not necessarily. Robin started. "No, he's right." The self-proclaimed god interrupted her. "When this land arrived into the sky 400 years ago, a bell could be heard ringing throughout the land, so it's definitely here." He paused for a moment. "The elders of this land called it the Song of the Island," he continued. "So that bell was made of gold. That's splendid." There was silence for a few moments. "That's splendid," Enel repeated. "Yahahaha. I suggest we search for it while we wait. Yahahaha." He laughed for a while, but after a few moments, his amusement was replaced by an annoyed expression. "I hear a maggot on the edge of the island," he murmured. Luffy looked at him in confusion. "I can't actually hear people's conversations. The best I can do is sense strong emotion and intent," he thought. Is this guy's observation haki actually stronger than mine, or is it because of his devil fruit? After a while his eyes darkened and he gained a scowl. His body also started crackling with electrical energy. He stood up from the ruin and raised his hand. "What are you?" Robin yelled. Electricity continued to build in Enel's left hand and soon it shot upwards. Almost at the same moment, Luffy sensed a strong discharge of energy somewhere on the island. What followed it was a strong sense of sadness and despair from a familiar aura. He gritted his teeth in anger, his right hand blackened. What was that? Robin asked in a panicked voice. Enel's body stopped crackling with energy and he dropped his arm. He smirked. Mercy, he answered in his arrogant voice. I extended a hand of salvation to a maggot writhing in pain and set his free. Isn't that what God does? It seems the girl is still running about, but that's not really important. It's time for everyone to learn of the celebration after all. They will all know despair. Robin looked nervously at the self-proclaimed god. This man possesses a logia type of devil fruit, she thought. She glanced at Luffy, who kept glaring at his enemy. Now then, Enel interrupted her thoughts. It's time to finish this, isn't it? We're running short on time. The final plan is ready to be executed. Final plan? Robin repeated. The god simply smirked again and raised his free hand. It's time, he yelled. Appear before me, lowly mortals, Sango. A strong blast of electrical energy was shot upwards and hit the island cloud around the beanstalk above. The place crumbled and pieces of the island cloud as well as ruins started falling from the sky. Enel simply grinned as the ones above panicked as they were falling. I have sent an invitation for your nakama to come to Shandora. Yahahahaha, the god wannabe announced. This man's ability, Robin said as she watched with widened eyes the carnage above. What terrifying power. She then glanced at Luffy, who kept his eyes on Enel. It was obvious that he was still mad, but his fist was no longer hockey-infused. He seems calm, she thought. Is he not even unnerved by this display of power? They ran out of the way as the ruins crashed down, along with the people and the giant snake. As the snake flew down, several people emerged from its open mouth. The Knight of the Sky along with his partner and after that Nami with the small girl, named Isa, on a waver. What's she doing here? Luffy thought as he saw Nami crashing into the ground. Near him, someone lifted a giant stone with his hand and threw it away from himself. Both Luffy and Robin looked at the man, who happened to be Zoro. Swordsman-san, Robin yelled. Couldn't breathe. Zoro complained. Luffy snickered. Did you fall down with the ruins? She asked him. Damn it, he cursed. I almost died. Robin's sweat dropped. You know, most people would have, she told him. You know, Zoro, I think I got an idea for my next battle entrance. She, he told them. Robin looked at him with widened eyes. You're going to fall from the sky? She asked him in disbelief. He nodded. She, should be fun, he replied. Zoro nearly fell down because of his answer. Ow, 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 another girlish voice announced. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. Nami stood up from the ground and headed towards them while massaging her rear. The knight, Gonfall, followed her and after him the small Shandian girl. Since when is falling from the sky fun, Luffy? She asked as she glared at him. He simply laughed. If you're rubber it is, he told her. She simply shook her head. By the way, is Chopper okay? Zoro? He asked after a few moments. The first mate set the doctor down on the ground and checked his pulse. He's fine, he replied after a while, but he's pretty beaten up. Luffy nodded and turned to Nami. Take care of Chopper, Nami, he told her. She simply nodded and took him in her hands. By the way, where are we? She asked. Robin looked at her. City of Gold, she told her. Nami looked angrily at Luffy. Where's the gold? She seethed, though her tone lacked her usual venom, no doubt from the tiredness. Luffy, you promised. It's not my fault, Nami, Luffy replied. God took it. God? She repeated fearfully. He's here? Luffy pointed at the said man, who simply sat on a ball of island cloud and observed them. He looked in her direction and she shrieked and hid behind Luffy. Between the Straw Hats, the warrior Wiper, the only remaining Shandian stood. He looked around in disbelief, clearly not expecting to find the lost city of Shandora so suddenly. Is this our home? He asked aloud. Shandora? The snake was also looking around, having lost its aggressiveness for the moment. After a few moments it did what nobody had expected it to do. It actually started crying. Enel punished it for its foolishness by blasting it with electricity. Enel then proceeded to mock the remaining Shandian warrior, telling him that everything was just a game. A game? The warrior repeated with disgust. Yes, game. The god replied with a mocking smirk. An innocent little game. And those behind you are the contestants. He looked behind him and the others approached to stand alongside him. He scowled at their arrival, but didn't do anything. Nami held Chopper and hid behind a wall, pulling Isa with her despite her protests. "I welcome you, spirited survivors," Anil announced arrogantly. "I commend you for making it this far." He was amused by their glaring expressions and laughed. "Yahahaha. What is it?" he asked mockingly. "I just had a little fun. 3 hours from when this began. There will only remain a handful of the 80 people who entered. It was the survival game." Luffy smirked as he remembered that most of those fighting actually survived it, except they were knocked out for a long time afterward. "It included myself," he continued, interrupting Luffy's thoughts. "Some joined afterward, but I've included them as well. I participated. There would be 5 survivors, but it seems there are 3 more." The fact that Nami and Isa were hiding behind a ruin didn't escape his notice. "So what will you do? Will you choose amongst yourselves or, shudsa?" he asked. This of course didn't amuse any of the ones present. Anil looked at each of them and smirked in amusement. He obviously didn't really believe they would accept his offer. They all announced that he should be the only one to go and pointed their weapon of choice at him. Except for Luffy, who just sort of stood there. "And you?" Anil asked mockingly as he looked at him. "Won't you make me disappear?" "I think a practical example on how to deal with annoying jerks like you is in order," he announced and smirked. The god seemed amused by his attitude and laughed. "Your insolence is amusing, but not very healthy," he replied and turned around. Ignoring their defiance, he then proceeded to explain his plans to them and what he had done so far. Of course, this enraged them further and the former god, Gonfall, finally snapped after being told of how the current god dealt with his former subordinates. He ran forward towards Enel with his lance to impale his enemy, but the self-proclaimed god simply laughed, threw his golden staff in the air and motioned to his chest invitingly. When the lance ran through him, his body simply reformed back and he prepared to blast the former god with electricity, but Luffy quickly pushed the man into the ground. Everyone, including both of gods, looked at Luffy, whose arms simply snapped back into position. "Oh, this is surprising. Yahahaha." Enel laughed. "Why are you protecting this hopeless old man? What's he to you? He is not one of your nakama?" Luffy smirked. "Maybe not, but he is a friend," he replied, and he helped Chopper. "You," Gonfall whispered from the ground. "Meh, it doesn't matter anymore," Enel announced. "The preordained time has come to pass and there are still too many survivors. How could God have been wrong?" He looked at the 4 people who stood against him, looking at the face of each one of them separately. "Yahahaha. Regardless, will you now accompany me to the world of dreams, survivors? To Fairy Verth?" he asked. "I'm feeling generous, so you may all join me?" He looked on the ground where Gonfall laid. "Even you, former god, Gonfall." "Yahahaha," he told him. Gonfall clenched his fist in anger. "I nay," he began. "What if we refused?" Robin interrupted. Enel looked at her oddly. "Why would refuse?" "I decided that," he replied. "If you remain here, you'll fall into the abyss along with this land." "You could do that with your power," Robin began. "But if you meaninglessly destroy this land, then the object which you seek will also be destroyed." "The golden bell, right?" he asked with an amused smirk. "Yahahaha. You don't need to worry about that. I've traced your steps and I now know there's only one place where it could still be. I believe we have the same conclusion, don't we?" His face then lost its amusement. "How unexpected," he growled. "You thought you could fool God with this kind of information." His right hand began surging with energy. He lifted it and pointed his index finger at her, and at its tip the electrical energy concentrated itself. "I hate manipulative women," he murmured. Robin looked in horror as lighting traveled towards her, but at the last minute someone jumped in front of her, taking the blast. "Luffy!" she screamed. She backed away slightly and shielded herself from the power. When the lightning ceased, everyone looked at Luffy. Enel gaped at him in disbelief, and the same was with the others. He turned around and looked at the astonished Robin. He smiled. "You called me Luffy," he told her and grinned. She blinked a few times. "Hey, are you okay?" she stuttered. He narrowed his eyes. "Are you okay? Who?" he asked. "Are you okay or not, Captain San?" she asked. He pouted. "You were supposed to say Luffy," he whined. "I don't think this is the best time for this. Luffy, she told him. He grinned and turned around to face his gaping enemy once again. How are you okay after that, Luffy? Zoro asked. He laughed. She. Well, I'm rubber, he announced. The Straw Hats got a look of understanding. I don't know what this rubber is, but nothing surpasses lighting, Enel yelled. Luffy turned around once again and looked at his first mate. Zoro, he told him. He looked him in the eyes and then quickly glanced with his eyes in the distance. Got it, Zoro whispered. He grabbed Robin by her hand and dragged her away from the scene. Then when he passed Nami, he grabbed her as well and they all got a short distance away from him and Enel. Luffy then looked at Wiper. I suggest you also get away from here, he told him. The man glared at him, but then sighed. If you think you can beat him, then knock yourself out, he seethed. But after Enel is gone, I'll settle things with you Blue Sea Dwellers. Upon hearing this, Luffy was the one to sigh. I have no grudge with you, he replied. Wiper growled. You're here on our land, he yelled. You're looking to take what is ours. Luffy started. As entertaining as your little chats have been, I've grown a bit tired of them, Enel announced and directed his palm at them. Thor, he roared and a massive electric blast headed towards them. Luffy inflated his stomach to cover more ground and shield the other man. As the lightning ceased, Luffy's stomach returned to normal and he turned around to the other man who stared in shock. Why did you protect me? He asked. Luffy grinned. If I hadn't, then his attack would have hit you, he replied cheerfully. The Shandian stared at him for a few moments, shook his head and then ran away from them. Luffy once again turned to face the self-proclaimed god. He glanced at the knight, who lay on the ground with Enel's foot on him. I need to first get him away from the weird old man, he thought. Then his eyes glanced to Enel's face and he nearly freaked out. What looked at him was an expression that clearly did not suit Enel. His eyes were as wide as they possibly could have been. His jaw was close to the ground and snot was running from his nose. Luffy smirked. So I guess this is what Giant Asen means when he says snot-nosed brat.